It's time for another monthly wrap up. Hey everyone, it's Fionn and welcome back to my channel, Christine Eva Chanel, and welcome to another monthly wrap up reading wrap up video. The month in question being February, of course. And I would consider this another great reading month. I don't think I had as many fantastic reads as I did in January. However, I didn't have any rubbish reads apart from one DNF. But last month, although I had like a 5-star, a 4.5 star, and I think maybe a 4-star as well, I also had a 1-star. And this month I didn't get beneath a 3-star. So I'd say it's pretty good going. My average rating was 3.8 compared to last month's 3.5. So we're on the up, guys. And yeah, I just had a great time. I'm really pleased with the amount of reading that I did. So my favourite read this month was actually the first book I read, Me Before You by Jojo Moyes, which I read as part of my reading romance books from different decades video. And I loved this book. I just thought it was sensational, and that's the word I used last time I spoke about it, but that is the word that I feel best describes this book and the way it made me feel. So we're following Lou, or Louisa, who very early on in the book loses her job in a cafe, which is a big blow for several reasons. The first being she absolutely loved the job and she was planning to stay there for a very long time, if not forever. And the second being that she really needs the money and her family is relying on her, the steady wage that this job has provided for the past 6 years. So everything's a bit up in the air. And in a bit of desperation, she agrees to try out a job as a carer or personal assistant for a 30-something quadriplegic man who became disabled and paralysed from the chest down in an accident 2 years ago. So from the get-go, it's like all guns blazing, this is heavy material, but oh my god, it's just so good. So she's really nervous about taking on this job. She doesn't have any experience really of engaging or interacting with disabled people, and her family are also quite nervous about it, but they're like, well, we need the money, it pays well, you're gonna have to try it. And it's a 6-month contract, so they're like, worst comes to worst, you do it for 6 months, you hate it, you have a horrible 6 months, but then you're finished and you don't have to think about it again. So she takes the job, and her and Will, I'm not sure if I mentioned his name before actually, but her and Will get off to a rocky start. She's one in a long list of PAs that he's tried, and he hasn't really got on with any of them. Same starts off with these two, but the fact that she's completely like unqualified for the job, I think he quite enjoys. She's not taking life too seriously and she's very quirky, and he seems to like her from the beginning as much as a person who doesn't really like anyone can like someone. So like I said, it's a bit of a rocky start, but then they get into a routine and they actually start to like each other, and then their feelings develop a little bit more, and it's just really lovely and wholesome. I was crying my eyes out at the end of this book, like actually crying my eyes out. I just thought it was magical. It was so good, and I can't wait to watch the film. I have the second book, I believe this is a trilogy, and I have the second book on my shelves right now. I'll read that hopefully sometime soon-ish, and then if I enjoy it anywhere near as much as this one, then I'll probably get my hands on the third as well. Yeah, I gave this 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. It was amazing. And I think this is the only Jojo Moyes book I've read, so I think I should definitely try her again. And then to finish off that vlog, I also read Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I did not have the same response to this book as Me Before You. Yeah, I just don't think this book was a good fit for me, and that's fine. I gave it 3 stars. It was very average. It was a very average romance book to me, which I know is a very unpopular opinion, but hey, that is mine. So in this book, we're following Nora, who goes on a holiday with her sister to get away from the city life and the work hustle. She's a hustler, Nora is, and her sister kind of sees that she needs a break. So she takes her away to this small town, like very romance novel coded, and creates her a checklist of things to achieve to kind of get her mind out of her work. But that obviously doesn't happen. Her work nemesis turns out to also be in the same place, and they just keep bumping into each other, and it develops into a kind of rivals to lovers situation. And I know that a lot of people absolutely adore this book, but I'm just not one of them, and that's fine. I gave this 3 stars. Next I read a book that was not really on my radar at all. Well, no, I'd never heard of it until one of my colleagues found out I was into reading and said, oh my gosh, have you read this book? You have to read it, it's amazing. And the book is A Child Called It by Dave Pelzer. This is a memoir about Dave Pelzer's abusive childhood, and it's horrific. The things that this man went through as a boy are just unthinkable, and it is absolutely awful. It's horrible to read, but the fact that I'm reading it makes me also happy in a way, because it means he came out the other side, because he wouldn't have been able to write this if he was still living in this situation. So it kind of has a hopeful note to it. I believe it's a trilogy as well. I think the next one follows his adolescence and then the third his adulthood. I think the person who lent me this has the other two, so I probably will read at least the next one and see what I think of that. This book is not designed to be a perfectly, fantastically well-written book. It's designed to tell his story, and I guess maybe for other adults with similar pasts to find some solidarity and see that there is hope and there is life beyond what you've been through so far. You can't put into words the things that this boy experienced and went through every single day, and I'm not really going to try, but it was just horrific, but a very eye-opening, I guess, and poignant read. And I gave this 3.5, maybe 3.75 stars. What did I give it? 3.75. Next I read Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban by J.K. Rowling. This book I read for my TBR job prompt for this month, which was a book with over 100,000 reviews on Storygraph, and this book actually had over 300,000. It was loads, which makes sense because it's one of the most popular book series of all time. This was definitely not my favourite one of the series so far. This is the third book. The first one I gave 3.5, the second one I gave 4, and then this one I also gave 3.5. And it's a shame because I liked the story of this one, but I noticed the sexism in this book so much, and I don't know if it's because it got mentioned in my uni course a few months back that, and this is proven, like they have software and data to find this out and concede it, but when a female character says something, they will use like often quite weak adverbs in comparison with what they use for the boys. So for example, Hermione was always whimpering something, whereas Ron and Harry would yell it in the same scenario. And I found it so noticeable. It really stood out for me in this book. And like I say, I don't know if it's because my eyes were open to it or if I would have noticed it anyway, but it was really like quite draining to read over and over again. There's one scene where Hermione like cowered behind Harry as they both were really scared, but he was like, I can do it, and she was like, okay, I'll go behind you. And it was just like, why? Make strong women and strong girl characters. But we all know that J.K. Rowling has some quite controversial views on gender equality and diversity and LGBTQ plus rights. They're controversial to what my beliefs are anyway, and that is all I'll say on that. But yeah, like I said, 3.5 stars, definitely going to continue with the series, but not my favourite so far. So my monthly poll was a tie this month between two rubbish books, basically. Two rubbish choices, the 4 options were all awful. So I didn't really know what was going to happen, but it was a tie between We the Survivors by Tash Orr and this book, Secrets of the Lighthouse by Santa Montefiore. So We the Survivors definitely sounded more interesting to me from the synopses, but I thought I'd give this one a go. I did think there was a strong chance that I'd DNF it because it just doesn't sound interesting to me, and it's a hardback, so that's already losing points. It's a book that my grandma gave to me, which sometimes works well, but quite a few of them that she gave to me in this like stack just bear no interest to me and have been sitting on my TBR 4 years at this point. As in 4 years, not the number 4 years. But actually, probably is about that long. Anyway, this book, yeah, so I thought, well, at least I'll get it off my TBR. And yeah, it was the easiest DNF of my life. I DNF'd it at 7 pages. It was very, very Christian based and heavily based in religion, which I just knew wasn't for me, and there was no point me carrying on with it because I wasn't going to do justice to what is probably quite good writing if you're interested in Christian fiction, but I'm not. So yeah, I finally got this book off my TBR. It's been on there for so long, and I will swiftly be getting rid of it after this. So after I read those 7 pages, I went straight into the other book, We the Survivors, but I've not actually finished that yet this month, so I will be talking about that in next month's wrap up. However, in the middle of reading We the Survivors, I had to pick up Holes by Louise Sachar for my uni studies, and I managed to finish this one first. It's a lot shorter. This was a very quick read. I think I read it in like 4 hours, possibly less than that. I actually really enjoyed this. I know quite a few people, at least in my area, studied this at school. I think we did it as like a practice to studying books before we actually had to study a book, and I didn't remember anything about it. I think we looked at it very briefly, but I did quite enjoy this for what it was. Like it's oh, my bookmark's still in there. Oh, that sounds good. I actually might try some more of his books, because while I was reading it I was like, I should read more stuff like this, which is like nothing spectacular but a fun time while I'm reading it and then quite forgettable at the end. So this is, I guess primarily aimed at teenage boys, but I still enjoyed it. It's about Stanley Yelnats, who gets arrested and ends up going to Camp Green Lake, which is a juvenile, correctional facility. So he goes there instead of jail, and what the boys there have to do is just dig holes and dig holes and dig holes and dig holes, and it's supposed to be character building. So we kind of watch Stanley fall into this routine of digging the holes in the middle of the desert. Although it's called Camp Green Lake, there's no lake, there's no water. The area's been cursed for like 100 years or something, and Stanley's just digging his holes. He's obviously got a few bumps along the road, and he starts to find some things a bit suspicious, and he's wondering, why actually are we digging these holes? Is there more to it than meets the eye? And yeah, this was just a fun little read to fill the gaps. I think this would be a good gateway into fiction with kind of blurred lines and also with changing timelines. For the younger readers that it's aimed at, who maybe haven't read books like that before, I think this is quite a good gateway into that. Like I said, lovely short chapters, very quick to read. Yeah, I've quite enjoyed this. I say I really enjoyed it, but I still gave it 3.5 or 3.75. 3.75, so like it wasn't anything amazing. I'm definitely going to forget about it, but for what it was, it definitely served its purpose, and I did like it. So there we have it, all of the books that I read in February. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!